Hello, hello, hello. It is 9 a.m. on September 26th, 2023, and we are back with another Mars Day. Mars Day meetups are a time where we come together. They're Patreon only. We come together once a week virtually to talk about the astrology of the week ahead, pull some tarot, ask your questions, share your experiences, etc. So thank you for being here, whether you're here live or watching on the replay. I appreciate sharing space with you. This week, it's full moon week. We have a full moon that happens at the end of this week, exact on Venus's day in the morning. It's a full moon in Aries, and it's bringing us into eclipse season. This is the last lunation before we get eclipses actually popping off, but it's happening in the same section of the chart that the eclipses are happening. So it's very much linked to the eclipse energy, but it's not an eclipse. So if you're looking for a time to do magical workings, I don't do magic within the eclipses. For me, the eclipses bring enough magic to the table. So I use eclipses as a time to integrate. If that's also your experience, then this would be the lunation week for you to really work with as we come into eclipse season. If you're someone that does work with eclipse energy, not that I don't work with it specifically, I just don't work with it to manifest specifically. I work with it in a more kind of chaotic way. Eclipses are kind of like chaos magic, right? Like they're doing their own thing outside of the realms of this material reality. And so sometimes our human brains, in my experience, can't fully comprehend the eclipse energies. And so it's hard for us in our human form to tap into that energy, to work with it or flow with it, because it's kind of outside of us and beyond us, if you will. So anyway, all that to say that this week we have an Aries full moon that is workable. There's a lot of energy packed into it, specifically fire energy. Uranus is active, so some of that chaos magic is definitely present here as well. But it's a very excitable moon energy that we have. So depending on where it's hitting in your chart and how you react to these energies, obviously, will kind of influence how you would use this energy as we go through. But we're going to talk about that this week. It's the main part of our chat this week. I also plan to do a 3-card spread here with you for that lunation. I'm going to try that little something new today. So we'll get into all that. We'll do the day by day like normal. But just taking a moment to check in. We're still under the Mars Chiron opposition that was exact on Sunday. We're still in that realm of energy. It's bridging us towards that Aries full moon. Similar energies playing out in the same part of the chart, the Aries Libra axis. So maybe noticing any triggers or activations that you felt within yourself or within your relations over the weekend that are potentially still lingering. Mercury's moving pretty fast in the sky. This week, it finally leaves its shadow. Some good things happening this week, for sure. So again, we have that Aries full moon. And on the same day, there's a square happening between Venus and Uranus. It's the third and final square, as Venus is also post-retrograde shadow, finishing up that with this square to Uranus being the third and final one. We'll talk about that. Uranus is also trining Mercury. Mercury is really active this week. Mercury's doing a lot. So just noticing your mercurial stuff, right? Mercury is the mind. Mercury is how we communicate. It's our friendships. It's relationships that are not romantic. So like our siblings, our friends, our cousins, those kinds of things are all mercurial. Mercury rules our neighborhood and the places that we see on a day-to-day basis. Mercury rules data and information. It rules the media. So there's a lot of mercurial energy. So just kind of tapping into the Mercury themes that may be present this week and just being aware of that, because the North Node is also active in this conversation. And so it's very much like soul movement and alignment of the way that we're moving through this lifetime. And so when that happens, it's not always easy, the things that we see and the way that we align and the things that we have to kind of come up against. But this week, with Mercury, the North Node, and Uranus all activated, it's important to resource your nervous system, right? Mercury and Uranus both tied to the nervous system. The North Node is a hunger for something. It's where we want to go in this life, where our soul yearns to move. So this week, things are at play that are kind of out of our hands. It's leading us into eclipse season, which is also known as that like out of our hands, destiny shifting kind of thing. So the importance of this week and eclipse season is that we go with the flow and notice our alignment, notice where our minds tend to take us, right? Does it feel in alignment? Does it feel like we need to shift to kind of keep our mind within our alignment? And I don't mean, we'll get into this a little bit more, because that might have sounded bypassy, and that's not what I mean. I mean, recognizing where our mind goes and listening to what comes up around it, right? And that's shadow work, right? So not only are we coming into eclipse season, but it's also shadow work season. And so there's some of that can come up and be present here as well. So first, I'm just going to kind of run through the transits of the week. There's a lot of like noise, like background stuff, quincunxes and trines specifically. And so it's a packed transit week. But again, the main thing that we're going to be focusing on and feeling is that Aries full moon, and then obviously all the transits that are within that. So this week I'll start. So those are all the exact transits that are happening this week. We'll break them down day by day, but first I just want to pause and breathe. If anybody wants to check in with what they're carrying. So if there's anything that you are moving through that you would like to share into the space, please feel free to do so. Any questions that you have, and then we'll get into the charts, and then we'll end with the tarot. We're going to share the screen and go through the day by day first. So here we are currently. So we start this week with the moon in Aquarius. On this day from 8 a.m. this morning until 8 p.m. this evening, Eastern time, the moon is void of course, which means the moon is in the sky and it's not hitting any aspects to any of the other planets for a really long time, for 12 hours. And when the moon is void of course, it's known to be untethered to any of the other planets' needs or wants. You know, the moon moves through the entire zodiac once a month. And as it does that, it's known to have conversations with the planets where it lends its ear. And then the moon is like our receptor. It's like our satellite. So the moon brings us downloads, intuitions, understanding. The moon is our most intimate planet. It's our most internal kind of way of ticking. It holds all of our memories and all of our instincts. And so the time where the moon is void, of course, we can learn a lot about our internal process. And so during the moon void, of course, it's a time where sometimes those things can come to us a little bit easier because none of the other planets are pushing their agenda, right? It's just the moon mooning, right? So if you have Aquarius in the first house, but again, moon is void of course today, so flow where you're able to and pay attention to your internal experience if there's space. And if there isn't space, no worries. We have a full moon this week, so it'll make space. That's the only main transit of the day. We're still feeling that quincunx. We're feeling the building of the full moon. We're feeling the building of the square between Uranus and Venus. The moon moves into Aries 8 p.m. Eastern time, and it builds towards that full moon, which is exact the following day on Venus's day, September 29th. We have the Aries full moon at 5:50 a.m. Eastern time at 6 degrees of Libra and Aries. Okay. So now you can see the opposition between the sun and the moon. That makes a full moon, right? So when the moon is exactly opposite the sun, reflecting all of its light and radiance, that makes a full moon. And in those times, there's a balancing of the external consciousness, the sun, and the internal subconscious, the moon, right? So as those things come into opposition, they're asking about the polarity of the signs and the houses and the places they fall in your chart. What is the balance that needs to happen? Where are things maybe out of balance? When full moons take us really deep into our emotional experience, it's an indicator that something within our conscious subconscious alignment is out of balance, that there's something that needs to be recalibrated, readjusted, refocused, etc. And so as this energy is present, it's important to notice our emotional experience, our emotional alignment around whatever is coming up, right? This Aries full moon ties us back. Again, this isn't an eclipse, but it's tied to the eclipses. So it can feel incredibly emotional, incredibly heavy. And in the collective, it can feel volatile. It can feel frustrated, irritated. It can feel burnt out, right? So again, it's really going to depend on our own lived experience and our own chart placements of how this energy is going to feel within our own experience. But it's also exciting because on the same day, we have the exact square between Venus and Uranus. This is happening. This could be exciting. You know, Uranus brings something new, something different. It's a breakthrough, it's liberation. You know, it's something different. And Venus, this can be that we express ourselves in a new way, some kind of new vision comes through, some kind of breakthrough in relationship. And this can be good or bad, right? You know, this energy can also come up in volatile ways as well. So as exciting as some people can feel this energy, other people can feel it in a much more violent or volatile way, being projected out or within their own experience, which is why last week I encouraged us to consider our feelings and emotions and connection to anger, how we feel it, where we feel it in our body. If you have things at or around 6 degrees of cardinal signs, which is Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, you're going to feel this full moon most intensely. If you have things at 20 to 25 degrees, 20 to 26 degrees of fixed signs, you're going to feel the square between Uranus and Venus very active in your experience. And when we think about just the full moon in general, a full moon is a time of illumination. It's a time of things coming to culmination or completion. It's where we recognize that something did work or didn't work, and we can release anything that needs to be released over the next couple weeks. That builds us into the new moon, right? And it's that continued cycle. But at the full moon, it can be at its peak, whatever the cycle is, whatever's coming up. And moons, lunations, anything having to do with the moon has to do with our emotions and our internal experience. You know, full moons often bring excitement and high energy. Some other people feel very exhausted by full moon energy. And again, that just depends on your own experience and how it lays in the chart and how your energy is generally. Like if you're someone that is high energy, then full moons might really amplify your energy to the extreme. If you're someone who is low energy generally, full moons might automatically drain any amount of energy that you had, right? So it really depends on your specific experience, which again is why we track the astrology. Aries full moon happens 5:58 a.m. Eastern time at 6 degrees of Aries and Libra. And then the Venus square to Uranus, the third one, happens at 22 degrees of fixed signs at 1:53 p.m. So it's exact after the full moon, which means it's building under the full moon. So very active still. Again, we will feel that the couple days before, couple days after as well, because these planets are moving pretty slowly. I'm going to stop with that because we're going to do a tarot reading for the full moon. So we'll get into that energy a little bit more. by Saturn's day, we're still feeling that full moon energy, but on this day we have the moon now in later mid and late degrees of Aries. And this is also the day that Mercury moves out of shadow, post shadow. Mercury stationed retrograde at 22 degrees of Virgo. So now on this day, it reaches that same degree and it starts to move into new territory, which is great because then it hits this trine to Uranus at 22 degrees of Taurus. Remember, Uranus is still feeding into that square to Venus at 23 degrees now of Leo. So Uranus super activated under this energy. So again, recognizing, honoring, resourcing the nervous system, and recognizing our alignment around how we're moving through this energy, what's coming up for us in our mental experience as we move through some of this emotional process, right? So this trine can be exciting news. It can be shocking news. It can be exciting, like processes in our own healing, our own nervous system work. There can be a lot of downloads and integrations that happen under this moon as well, or sorry, under this aspect as well. Over the weekend, I would, take notes on things that come up to you, ideas that you have. Some of them will be great. Some of them will feel great in the moment, but then, a couple days later, you're going to be like, that's trash. But the thing about this aspect, this trine between Mercury and Uranus, is that we can get a whole bunch of downloads, upgrades, innovative ideas, out of the box thinking. But as soon as they come to us, they're gone just as quick. So it's important over the weekend, if you have ideas, to write them down, to put them in your notes, to text them to a friend, to send them to yourself on Messenger, whatever your process is, so that you can come back to them and remember kind of like what you were processing, what you were thinking, what was coming to you. Because what's also activated this weekend is the North Node. And the North Node, again, is the hunger our soul feels in this life. And the North Node is tied to the eclipses, and we're coming into eclipse season. So what happens over this weekend is that Venus and Mercury both have conversations with the North Node that allow us to kind of get aligned a little bit for the eclipse season. And then, my friends, we get to a new month. We're in October. The moon has moved into Taurus. On this day, we have two exact quincunxes. We talked about quincunxes already. I won't do it here. I've done it in other Mars days as well. If you want to learn more about the aspect, type in quincunx into the search bar on Patreon. And then we get to Monday. Some of that energy slacks, but we're still really feeling all of the transits that we've talked about. Mars is now coming into another opposition now with the North Node. So again, with understanding that alignment, what are we moving towards? If we can become more aware of what we're moving towards, we can understand if we want to continue to move towards it, right? And that's a longer conversation and a lot to unpack within it. And I'm always here to help if that feels like it would support you. Feel free to reach out and we can chat about it. But on the moon's day, we have two other exact transits. So the first thing that we have is the opposition happening between Mercury at 25 degrees of Virgo and Neptune at 25 degrees of Pisces. This is an opposition, so we can feel it with polarity within our own experience. We can also feel it in conversation with other people, me against you, us against them, etc., etc. It's confusing, it's foggy, it's lethargic, it's dreamy, it's creative, it's poetry, it's romance, it's lost in the sauce. And then the other thing that we have here is a trine happening, the exact trine between Venus and the North Node. So again, around that alignment, this time with our values, the Venus things. The things that Venus has been working through in the Leo part of your chart are asking to be integrated, are asking to, we're being invited to walk with our values. This may be difficult, especially if there's things that came up under the Venus retrograde that are hard or new, right? This is an opportunity for us to choose those values that we anchored into, to choose that alignment in a new way. And it's a trine, so it's flowing, it's creative. So again, doing that work of recognizing where our mind is taking us earlier in the week allows us to come into this space with this trine and flow within our values in a way that helps us move into alignment with our soul's journey, or whatever you believe and want to call it, but the trajectory of our life, if you will. That's the astrology of the week. So yeah, I'll pause here. If anybody has any questions, comments, wants to share anything, pop out, share it live. I'm going to take a sip of water, get out, decide which tarot deck I want to use, and then we're going to do a 3-card tarot spread, and I'll talk more about it in a little bit when I get back. But feel free to share anything that's coming up for you, any questions that you have, and I'll be back. So I can't help myself. Shadowland Tarot is what we're going to use today. We'll talk more about it. Let me know what comes up for you, if you feel like talking about it, if you have any questions. And we'll chat soon. I love this. The star card was on the bottom, indicating that we're healing. We're doing it. We're doing it. Okay. We'll chat soon. Have a week. I look forward to hearing from you. See you when I see you.